Good morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod.
Hello, my friend.
Good to be here with you.
Good to be here with you.
We've got a lot of stories to cover.
We do.
And the first two, we've just added, not my favorite. I had
No.
reported to you guys last week that Omarion Humphrey, the young boy who had gone missing on the 4th of July, that we were desperately trying to find Omarion, and unfortunately they have found him and he drowned.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire time that they were looking for him, he was in a lake that was just about 50 feet from the area where he was supposedly safe with the foster family. We're finding out more information that is deeply disturbing to me about this young man. They're saying that there's no sign of foul play or trauma, and we both know that you can turn your head for just a moment and a child can go missing. But this is the second time in my recent memory that we have a child that was taken away from their family and put with a foster family and then went missing and is dead from the foster family. This
Under the foster family's care.
Under the foster family's care, yes. Thank you for... I can't imagine how devastated the parents are. They were able to look at the footage, surveillance footage, outside the pavilion that he was in and showed him walking toward a splash pad at 5:09 p.m. He walked out of the view of the cameras and never appeared on the footage again. They've just reopened.
Was the family with him at the fenced-in splash pad?
Well, apparently, yes. So I don't...
That's what I'm confused about.
It is very, very
They had
confusing.
a fenced-in splash pad 50 feet from his foster family's picnic table, and then that splash pad was 25 yards from the lake.
Yeah, so...
You would think they would have seen him go from the splash pad, if it was fenced in, to the lake.
Yeah, it's devastating. He was apparently taken from his family of origin because he was living in squalor with his 8 siblings while his biological parents lived in a separate, tidy apartment.
Oh.
Yes. He and his siblings were removed from the home by Child Protective.
How old was Omarion Mars was, I guess, his nickname.
I think he was 11 years old, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, I don't see it here in the report.
But he had been with that foster care family for 5 months before he went missing. Devastating, and our prayers are with everyone involved. So devastating.
He's 9 years old, it says.
9 years old. Okay, I was thinking he was 11. But we have, unfortunately, we have to report to you that there is a 13-year-old who is missing now in Missouri. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is asking for help. Kelby has a picture of Jonathan Shea, who is 13 years old. This is Jonathan right here on your screen right now.
St. James, Missouri, Central Missouri, South Central Missouri.
And has been missing since July 9th. He's considered high functioning, and he left on his own after teaching himself some survival skills. He's 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighs 90 pounds, has brown hair, brown eyes, was last seen wearing a gray t-shirt, blue shorts, and black tennis shoes.
I'm not sure what that means, teaching himself survival skills.
Well, apparently this was something that he had an area that he was interested in.
Oh, so he was out in the outdoors.
And took off. They're saying anyone with information about him can make an anonymous call to 800-843-5678. Again, that's 800-843-5678. Let's find this young man, Jonathan Shea, age 13. If you're in the Missouri area, please be sharing that picture.
Okay.
Okay. On happier fronts, there was a really wonderful article in the New York Times this week about something that was off my radar because my son is older now, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
Right.
We used to always watch PBS and different programs. Well, apparently there's a newer program that is out called Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. And autism families are coming forward and saying how remarkable this program is. It comes to us from the makers of Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and the people who made Blue's Clues.
Which my son loved Blue's Clues.
Right. And I loved Fred Rogers. My dad was in educational television and actually worked with Fred Rogers. So and this is Daniel Tiger's neighborhood, and that kids on the autism spectrum are learning about how to respond socially. And it isn't just for kids with autism, by the way, but the kids with autism, through the songs and through the lessons, are starting to parrot them and saying that that's where they learned it, is from watching Daniel Tiger. I love that television has the ability to teach and uplift. This has always been a thing that I was taught in my family, that television is a thing of good.
Yes, it can be, certainly.
Can be.
Is this PBS, a regular PBS or PBS Kids? Do you know? 'Cause they're two separate channels.
I think this airs on regular PBS, but I think
PBS?
some things that air on PBS then air on PBS Kids, but
Okay.
I'm not
I'm gonna
100%
look it up.
sure of that.
Yeah.
But they're really tackling a lot of social cues and things like that. I really want to recommend that you read the blog. It's
The Motherload. And Rasha Madkour on July 12th. And she said the first time she saw the magic in action after her son, they'd spent countless hours on therapy and all kinds of things. And she thinks his newfound ability is due to Daniel Tiger. She said that her son was busy at the train table, oblivious to the infant wailing nearby. When I pointed out to him that this infant who was reaching for the trains, he initially dismissed the idea. Then came Daniel the Tiger magic. I sang one of his catchy jingles. Think about how someone else is feeling. Maybe you can help them feel better. He thought about it for a moment and handed her the train. She immediately stopped crying, started gnawing on the wheels while making happy baby noises. You could see the understanding dawn on my son's face as he watched the transformation. Then he smiled.
I love the lessons that she's reporting that they're learning on this show. That one of the sing-song things that her son says is, "You can take a turn and then I'll get it back." What a wonderful thing. And also, you've got to try new foods because they might taste good. What a wonderful lesson. If you have to go to the potty, stop and go right away. It's almost time to stop, so choose one more thing to do.
And preschoolers' feelings of inadequacy. Everyone is big enough to do something.
Yes.
So I'm definitely going to check this out, because my son still does like some of the more. I mean, he still loves Thomas the Tank Engine, which I understand is the reason that children with autism are so attracted to Thomas, is the faces are so easy to read on the trains.
Yes.
So I think he's going to like this.
I think it's wonderful. I love this one. Saying I'm sorry is the first step. Then how can I help? I know some adults that need to know this, right? Don't you love people who just go, "Well, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
So, get over it. I'm sorry. We're done.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. And in tougher news, this is a companion to what we covered last week. We were talking about some different stories in the news where kids on the autism spectrum have met terrible abuse in the last year.
The young man with Asperger's who did a very heroic thing by, when he was abused by his so-called friends who set him up, he then, instead of asking for punishment, asked for them to do community service and to learn to take sort of a course in learning about autism.
And you and I both commented on that story and said, how many times have we seen this recently, that something horrible happens to a kid on the spectrum and it was done by people who purported themselves to be their friends.
Their friends. And apparently this has got a new name out of England, mate crime, replacing hate crime, as children with Asperger's and autism increasingly being abused and robbed by so-called friends.
Yeah, I mean, they're starting to do studies on this and see that this is really an issue that we all need to be aware of.
Yeah, what they're doing is they're even tricking kids into giving their credit cards, their PIN numbers. One daughter was robbed of her iPhone. Another, a boyfriend who shows up when it's her payday for her disability living allowance, and he gets that from her. So really exploiting and abusing our kids on the spectrum, which is just a horrific thing to do. And once again, I think parents have got to educate their kids about, really learning to befriend children on the spectrum, help them. This it's just horrible.
And listen to some of these statistics. A report found that 80% of respondents over the age of 16 felt that they had been bullied or taken advantage of by someone that they had thought was a friend. This compares to a figure of 49% when the National Autistic Society asked the same question of over 18-year-olds in a nationwide survey last year. So we're seeing an uptick in it, something that needs to be on our radar.
And by the way, I saw on this too that Susan Boyle got an Asperger's diagnosis. There was a link.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
That's been a while.
Okay.
Yes, we've reached out to her and asked her to be on the show and have had no response. This is all over Facebook today. This is a topic that you and I have talked about before, the idea of poo transplant.
Yes.
And does it have
Fecal
an effect?
transplants,
Yes.
I guess, is the
Yeah, but I like the poo
Poo.
transplant. Poo transplant. This is something we've been talking about for years because it is available here in the United States, and not particularly as an autism therapy, but it's available to people who are having extreme gut issues that you can have. What I always wonder is who are the people that they're lining up that are the poo donators who apparently have the healthiest colons
I
in the
wonder
world.
how they determine
how do they
that.
fare? But we know that there are gut in the bacteria or in our colon, and you know what they say in Japan: happy colon, happy life. And that what you can do, you can go through a whole bunch of therapies and drink a whole bunch of probiotic, which I'm working on right now, or you can go to doctors and they will put a transplant of some, it sounds disgusting, right? But of someone else's fecal matter into your colon so that their good bacteria will populate your colon. And some folks are trying this in Australia with kids on the autism spectrum and seeing some amazing results because it's fairly quick.
Okay. And do you know who does it here?
Well, somebody who used to, the young woman who used to do our help me, Kelby, what is the name of it? Smarty. Our Smart Craft, her mother is somebody here in Los Angeles that this is what she does. She does fecal transplants, and so we had heard about it a long time ago. I guess
I've heard about it for a while. I just didn't know which doctors administer it, whether it's covered by insurance, how expensive it is. Once again, a lot of these sort of fringe therapies seem to say this, they say it's expensive. It can be like stem cell, whatever, IVIG, a lot of these fringe things that aren't proven. And by the way, a professor out of an autism research center in Melbourne told the newspaper that reported this, Women's Weekly, she would absolutely not recommend parents of children with autism consider a fecal transplant. While the gut microbiome is a promising new area of science, that doesn't mean it can be cured with altered gut bacteria. However, we recently did a story, and I was featured in a news piece here in Los Angeles on doctors at Caltech who have determined that in rats that the introduction of beneficial bacteria has taken, they have studied rats and shown that with that beneficial bacteria, the autism-like behaviors cease. So they are recommending highly the use of probiotics, anything naturally occurring with probiotics like kefir, yogurt. What other foods, Shannon? The fermented?
Yes, the fermented, naturally fermented things like sauerkraut and pickles, not with vinegar, things that are fermented in crocks with naturally appearing bacteria.
Right.
Those fermented foods.
Yes.
I think it's interesting. I think this is a pretty accepted, not talked about widely therapy for other things, not for autism. And I think if you're going to go to your gastroenterologist and talk to them about this and talk about a fecal transplant, I would broach the subject talking about we're having gut issues. I would not broach it with them and saying we're having autism issues.
Right.
Because I think deeming it an autism therapy is where, she goes so far as to say the autism field is a quack magnet. This, that's what this article says. So I think I wouldn't go there. I would just talk about the gut.
Right.
And if there is a
Treating the gut
benefit,
can maybe treat the,
yeah.
you know, it can neurologically change things neurologically.
And that's widely accepted now.
Widely accepted that an overabundance of yeast in the system can make our children more severe in their self-stimulatory
Not just
behaviors.
our children, make all of us.
All of us.
All of us not perform at our highest ability.
Yeah.
That, you know, the gut-brain connection is in a much different place among, you know, the entire world is accepting, turn on the TV and every third commercial is for a probiotic.
That's true.
So, hello. Okay, and our last story, because we have a wonderful guest that we need to get to. A lot of stories from England today.
Yeah.
I must have been in an English mood.
Yes.
But there's a new program that I know it's just a matter of time before we'll be able to get it here, that features a gardener. It's called the Autistic Gardener, a young gentleman who is on the autism spectrum, and he's a gardener, and he has a bunch of people who work with him, and I think that they're all also on the spectrum.
They're all on the spectrum.
And so it's a reality TV program where they're following them and seeing the things that they run into. I personally can't wait to see this program.
I can't either. It says, and then they say that the title of the article is The Autistic Gardener Review, Is Autism the New Baking? Autism, it's the new baking. Have you noticed? Very fashionable right now on the TV. So,
did you watch the Great American, not the Great American, but the Great British Baking Show? Because
No.
I think that that's what this is. Jim and I were just riveted to this.
Really?
I have
Why?
to say. Because, well, I liked the American baking show too, but the British baking show and all of England stopped what it was doing to watch that show.
Really?
It was a reality show where it was competition where they baked things, and you got to know the people on it. It was fascinating. It was wonderful to listen to the accents, and they eat differently than we do, and
yes,
they
I
bake
know.
differently than we do.
I happen to think, and excuse me, Brits, but I happen to think England is the home of the worst cooking in the world.
Well, this baking stuff was
based on my
fascinating.
time being
It's
there.
fascinating. And so we watched it, and there was controversy that came about because one person got eliminated, and it was in all the newspapers. And we were watching it a couple of months late over here. It was as big as Downton Abbey. It was that big.
What
the Great
made
British.
it so successful?
I loved it. I don't know what to tell you. I absolutely loved it. But I think part of it, and they're real people, but it was, you got to see into, when you see what people eat and how they cook it, you get to see into who they are and how they feel about their food. I don't know, it gets very personal. And the people were very different, and there were all different kinds of classes mixed in together.
And was it a large variety of foods? Because one of the things that I found...
all baking.
Okay. Oh, okay. I think, okay, I'll take back my comment about British food being abysmal, because I do think they're baking. I mean, let's face it, scones and high tea is lovely.
And to watch them make biscuits,
but,
like, we don't make biscuits.
But going into a restaurant and having, you know, Yorkshire pudding or fish and chips or, you know, shepherd's pie, it's just very high carb, high meat, high, for my taste.
And they were showing some of these different things. It was fascinating. It was just fascinating. Everybody loved it. It was a big hit here, and now they're saying that this is like the new baking, autism.
Okay.
So I'm excited.
Well,
I can't
I'd like
wait
to see this show.
I hope PBS starts to carry it like they did.
He's
the baking
obviously
show.
a very high functioning young man in terms of his autism.
I can't wait.
Okay.
So excited. If you have an opportunity, watch The Autistic Gardener.
Okay.
All right, we've got a great guest. Speaking of employment, because that's another thing about this is employment, this is great things. We have a great guest who's with us today. Tom Coleman is from the Disability Abuse Project, and he's going to be talking with us about some things that are happening. You and I covered a story recently that was in the LA Times about a young man who was thrilled about the idea that he was going to get to vote, but his mother had conserved him and didn't realize that somewhere in that process, he had lost his ability to vote.
Right.
And there's a big debate right now about whether that's appropriate. Should we be taking away their voting rights? There's some other things that Tom's going to talk with us as well. Really excited to have him here. We're going to take a break and come back right away with him, so stick with us. Don't go away.
What would you do if your child was hurting?
If your family's future was uncertain.
If help
seemed out of reach.
Have you been given no hope?
TACA means I am not alone in this.
This is the reality for families affected by autism, and today, the number of children with autism is growing more rapidly than ever. TACA unites these families and ensures that they do not have to fight this battle alone.
Our oldest son, Jared, who has autism, when we first took him to the doctor to get the diagnosis, you know, it's so sad because they offer you nothing. There's no help, there's no hope. One of the things that you learn with autism is being very grateful for even the small milestones. You know, when you first get the diagnosis, you go through all the range of emotions. You know, this can't be happening. Why is this happening? You have to get to a point where it's the emotion that has to be leading is, what can I do? The first thing that struck me was walking to a room and seeing, oh my gosh, we're not alone. And there is this very strong community that's already set. And something I still today associate with TACA the most is hope. To me, that's what TACA means. TACA means hope.
It's like you've got all these dreams and goals of what your son's gonna do, and you get your diagnosis and you're sent home. And that's it. There's no plan of action. There's no, here's autism, here's what we're gonna do to make your life better and help him. It's strictly go home and try to process it and go on the internet. It was devastating, and you just, you know, you go through this 3-week of depression and then you snap out of it. You have to. And then you start making phone calls and trying to figure out what is autism and what are we gonna do? And then we found TACA, and it was life-changing.
Autism, there really is no definitive answer. It is trying to find the resources that are out there that can assist you to help your child so that, you know, you just don't feel so helpless at those particular moments.
There was direction and there was hope and there was a little ray of sunshine that he's gonna be okay and we're gonna be okay. I always look back and think we would never be where we are. Carson wouldn't be where he is at without TACA.
So 13 years ago, my son was diagnosed with autism, and that put our whole family into a tailspin. There were so many different ideas and things that were not proven. Nobody knew what guidance to give us. We had no direction. And then we found TACA. They helped give us a path to follow, help give our son a better future and make him healthy and put him back onto the road of recovery. When your son's first diagnosed, the first thing you hope for is, gosh, I just want my son to speak. I just want to be able to communicate with him in some way. Then you want a little more. You want him to go to a regular school. Then you want him to potentially have a real life and go to college. So you're always hoping for the future of your child. My son is a happy, healthy, vibrant young boy that's going to turn 15 really soon, and we couldn't be more pleased, and without TACA, I don't think we'd be in the place that we are today. We believe the future is not defined for many affected by autism. There is hope and direction for these kids and their families. TACA is dedicated to providing community, support, education, and hope to families affected by autism.
At TACA,
At TACA,
At TACA,
We are families with autism helping.
helping.
helping families.
helping families with autism.
Hi, my name is Matt. I am 19 years old, and I was diagnosed with autism when I was 6 years old. Autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disabilities in the United States, but I am living proof that with the right treatment, hope is possible. My future is not limited. Today, I am attending Fullerton Community College, and I run for the cross-country team for fun with my friends. It makes me feel proud when I think about my progress. Chances are you know someone affected by autism. Show them they are not alone and help others get on the road to recovery. Contribute to Talk About Curing Autism today.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. And now Shannon and I are joined in the studio by our guest. Thomas F. Coleman is an attorney who has championed equal rights and justice for more than 40 years. He's been devoting his advocacy skills over the past few years to reforming the limited conservatorship system in California. He is the legal director of the Disability and Abuse Project of Spectrum Institute. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well,
Glad to
very
be here.
impressive. Anybody that is a champion of equal rights and justice for our population for more than 40 years, first of all, Shannon and I would like to thank you for that.
Yes.
Well, you're welcome.
And I'd like to know, how did you get into this field? What led you, I mean, you're an attorney, but what led you to working with those on the spectrum and championing their rights?
Well, I started off my advocacy involving actually gay rights and sexual orientation discrimination. Then I started working when Governor Brown was first time around in the 1970s. A few of us got him to create a Commission on Personal Privacy to look into privacy issues for a broad spectrum of populations, and we made sure to include people with disabilities in that spectrum. And out of that study came an awareness that certain populations shared a certain interest in privacy, and that the most important was bodily privacy, that is, freedom from violence. And hate crimes were very prevalent. And so there were some calling for sexual orientation to be added to the hate crime law in California that dealt with race and religion and color and national origin. And I said, that's great, but I think that we should include disability status and age for seniors, and that there are vulnerable populations that sometimes are targets because of hate, sometimes just because of ignorance and bias, and that we should include all three categories. And so we were able to keep that package of all three together, and Governor George Deukmejian, a Republican, signed that into law, and there was, for the first time, protection against hate crimes for people with disabilities, for seniors, and for the gay and lesbian community. And throughout then my career, as my interests shifted from topic to topic where I saw there was a need, I made sure to include people with disabilities. So the next wave of activism involved family diversity, and that families come in many types, and that people who have family members with disabilities are a special population that needed attention, just as single parent families and unmarried couples and gay and lesbian couples and so on. So again, kind of a coalition approach to family diversity. So over time, I went through, different waves of activism, but they always included people with disabilities. But then I thought, okay, I wrote a book about my 40 years of activism called The Domino Effect. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna, maybe semi-retire or whatever, and wrote the book a few years ago. And then all of a sudden, I started having cases come my way that involved people with developmental disabilities, including autism. And my colleague, Dr. Nora Baladarian, who's worked in the field for decades, would send me a case and say, can you look at this? Because, she's not a lawyer and I'm a lawyer. And so I started looking at cases, and that's when I became introduced to this, what's called the adult guardianship system. And in California, it's called limited conservatorships, and the abuses of the rights of people with developmental disabilities, including autistic people, within that system. And I all of a sudden found myself having to learn a lot about disability law, a lot about Americans with Disabilities Act, a lot about conservatorship law. And my expertise had been civil rights, constitutional law, appellate litigation, politics, media, and all of a sudden I was called to bring all of that to the forefront in a battle for justice for people who are being brought into or a part of the limited conservatorship. So, and one of them, which we'll talk about later, had opened my eyes up to voting rights abuses of people with developmental disabilities.
So tell our audience where they can find out more information about the Disability and Abuse Project.
All right. You can go to on the website, you can go to spectruminstitute.org. And spectruminstitute.org will take you to an opening page. We actually have two projects. The one is the Disability and Abuse Project, and the other is the Disability and Guardianship Project. The Disability and Abuse Project deals with all aspects of life where people with developmental disabilities are victims of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, etc. And it deals with psychological, social, political, legal issues involving abuse of people with disabilities, which is way too rampant, way too, I mean, that's a topic all in of itself.
As we discussed in the first segment,
Yes.
this mate crime, which I don't know if you overheard what
Yeah, I
we were
did hear,
saying.
yeah.
And so is this a resource that families, let's say a family has someone in the family they believe has been the victim of a crime and abuse. Would your organization be able to help them with that?
Well, not really. We don't take direct cases.
Okay.
But whenever that happens, people should call Adult Protective Services or Child Protective Services
Okay.
or the police and report it. What we do, research, education, policy work, and advocacy
I see.
on class-based issues. Although when it came to guardianship, I found myself being drawn into a few individual cases when they come your way and it's presented right there, then and there, then sometimes we've gotten involved in an individual case. But our organization is one of just volunteerism. We don't have grants and budgets and government money and all of that. It's volunteers, working on, as I say, research, education, and policy. And so if you go to our website, you'll find resources that will help you become educated or educate others about these issues. And there are a lot of self-help publications that we have about abuse. And then when it comes to the guardianship, adult guardianship, there are also many publications that are available to those who have been, quote, victims of the adult guardianship system.
Okay,
or
we
who-
want to
Yes.
get into that in the next
We
segment.
definitely
the
do.
whole
So we should take a
guardianship
break.
issue.
We'll take a break and we're going to come back and talk more with Thomas Coleman about guardianship, conservatorship, and what it does to voting rights and what specifically it's doing to voting rights here in California. Stick with us.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to just
Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism,
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
It's always unique, totally intelligent, and sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
It's a movement.
Unpredictable.
That's right.
Awesome.
Love. The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these three words. There is hope.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy and I are here with Thomas Coleman. He is an attorney who has been championing equal rights for many decades. He is also the legal director of the Disability and Abuse Project of Spectrum Institute. He's here with us today we actually found you because of an article that was in the Los Angeles Times that caught our attention, and we called to see if you would come on the show. And we talked about it a little bit, but if you could refresh our viewers' memory about what that article was about.
Okay, our project got involved in the issue of voting rights for people with developmental disabilities, particularly within the context of the limited conservatorship system, which is the adult guardianship system. So this system, which is run by judges, had been taking away the voting rights of thousands of people in Los Angeles County and throughout the state. And they were doing it in violation of federal laws. As everyone knows or should know, voting is a constitutional right and it's a statutory right. And when you turn 18, you have that right. And the law presumes that you have capacity to vote. And in California, there are only very limited circumstances when that right can be taken away, like if you're convicted of a felony. And then you can get it restored later with a pardon and so on. But with respect to people with developmental disabilities, if you become involved in a limited conservatorship proceeding, then your right to vote can be taken away under certain circumstances. And what was happening is the attorneys who were appointed to represent the person with the disability were just checking off a box, which ensured that their client's right to vote would be taken away.
Wow.
The parents who petitioned for the conservatorship were checking off a similar box that guaranteed that the person's right to vote would be taken away.
And they weren't really aware
They
of
weren't
this.
really aware that there were options and choices and so on. And I went to a training once of these attorneys. And I'm not one of those attorneys, but I started studying them because when I started seeing the abuses by the attorneys who are supposed to protect the rights of their clients, and they were surrendering the rights, I said, I've got to study this. So I've been studying the limited conservatorship system for 2 years, about 2,000 hours of research into it, so I know it quite well.
And this particular case involved one young man
There
and
was
his mother, and the young man always wanted to vote. From
Yes,
the time he heard about, he always wanted to see a woman as president.
Stephen Lopate, before he was 18, said he wanted to vote, and he wanted to vote for Hillary Clinton. And his mom petitioned for conservatorship because she felt that he wasn't capable of making financial decisions or medical decisions. And then she went to a self-help clinic that helped her fill out the forms. They told everybody to check off the box that takes away voting rights. She did it, not really realizing. But then when the attorney got appointed to represent her son, she questioned him. What about voting rights? My son wants to vote. The attorney gave her bad advice and said, oh, that's inconsistent with conservatorship. So he was going to take away his right to vote. The mother got referred to me by my colleague, Dr. Baladarian. And when I heard this, I thought, this doesn't sound right. So I started researching the law, especially I thought there are federal laws. And I realized that California's statute said that the judge should take away the voting rights of a conservatee if they are unable to complete an affidavit of voter registration. And so that was the test. Can they complete an affidavit of voter registration? And I heard a judge educating at a seminar telling the attorneys, well, one mother said, that's no problem, I can fill it out for him and he can sign it. And the judge said, oh, that's not how it works, I told her. And then the whole room of attorneys laughed. And I was flabbergasted. I didn't laugh, it made me furious. And I thought, you know what, you're going to regret that, mister. And I've made an example of that judge ever since about that.
Huh?
So we convened we intervened in that case, and I let that attorney know, if you don't back down, you're going to be in real trouble. So he did back down, and Stephen got his right to vote.
Yeah.
And it looks like he may have his chance to vote for the first woman president.
Exactly. So we convened.
He'll have the last laugh, right?
We convened a voting rights conference, and I met someone from the Secretary of State's office last year before the new election occurred. And so Deborah Bowen was the Secretary of State then. They introduced a bill in the end of the session to clarify that a person could have assistance in filling out the affidavit.
Okay.
So that eliminated, and that went through, got signed by the governor. But I kept saying it's still a literacy test because you have to be able to read, write, or understand in order to fill out an affidavit of voter registration. And 1965 Voting Rights Act, they used to use literacy tests against poor black people in the South.
Of course they did.
So the law says, federal law says, no state can pass a law that requires someone to prove that they can read or write or understand or interpret any matter. And I said that's exactly what this law does. So this year, the ACLU picked up the ball from where we left off last year. SB 589 was introduced, and it eliminates that literacy test, and it turns things around, and it says everyone, when they turn 18, are presumed competent to vote, even if they're in a limited conservatorship. And in order to take that right away, somebody, the person with the disability doesn't have to prove anything. Somebody who's trying to take it away has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that they are unable to indicate a desire to vote.
Okay.
So that's the only test. If they can indicate in whatever their method of communicating is that they have a desire to vote, then they get to vote, and somebody has to prove to a judge that they cannot indicate that. Now, it just so happens SB 589 is in its last committee hearing today.
Okay.
It's passed every other committee. From there, it'll go on to the full assembly, and then it'll go on to the governor. So I suspect within a month, that will become law, and that then the question is how to restore the voting rights of the tens of thousands who had it taken away. So that all got happened because Stephen Lopez said he wanted to vote, and they got hooked up with our organization that just decided it wasn't right, and that we had to do something to fix it. So you never know the difference you can make.
Yeah. Once again, so many of our individuals on the spectrum being discriminated against because they do things in the same neurotypical fashion, perhaps, as the rest of the world. So thank you for your advocacy on that.
Absolutely.
Now, conservatorship.
Yes.
Shannon, you've covered this before.
Yeah,
And-
I mean,
and
it's
can
something
we
we've spent a little bit more
basic
time on
about
this
it?
year, but we'd love to hear from you because my understanding of it is that it's sort of like a menu, and that you can choose things from it and not have to choose. There's not one size fits all. Is that how you feel about
Yes,
it?
limited conservatorship. There's general and limited. General is generally used for people with dementia or serious brain injury, not people with developmental disabilities, where it pretty much is an all or nothing because they're so far gone
Right.
mentally
They have
that
no capability of
at all.
thinking for themselves. Got it.
Limited conservatorship was created in 1980, coming out of the disability rights and independence living movements. And the notion was that so many of the people that may need some help, they're young. They just turned 18. They have a whole life ahead of them, and they have a lot of abilities, but they may need help in some areas and not need help in others. So there were 7 areas that were targeted. So you have medical, you have residential, choice of where to live, you have access to confidential medical records, you have social, you have sexual, you have financial. So you have this wide range of individual choices. And so the person who's petitioning, which is often a parent or relative, chooses those areas that they think the person needs help. But see, that's their opinion.
Right.
And the judge is supposed to be transferring authority to make decisions in certain areas from the person with the disability to the person who will be made conservator. Well, sometimes there's overreach by a parent or relative, and they want to control sexual or social, but maybe the person has the ability to make decisions in those areas. So the judge has to appoint an attorney to represent the person with the disability. That attorney is supposed to make sure that rights are not taken away that that person should keep, even though the parent wants it.
Yeah.
So there's a conflict of interest here that needs to be, paid attention to. The regional center does an assessment and helps out with this. Now, I'm working in a case now where the young man, high functioning on the spectrum, has his own apartment, has a part-time job, does volunteer work for various agencies, has a lot of friends. He kept his social rights so he could make decisions about who to socialize with or not, until one of the parents didn't like the fact that he was choosing friends and recreation over visiting with the parent. The parent used his power and authority and money to convince the court to start making orders to make the adult son go with the parent rather than being able to do his activities. Then the son made objections about going to church, saying, I don't like church. I don't want to go to church. The parent would make him go to church anyway. So we've got issues of social rights, sexual rights, and especially religious freedom, that no one should ever be able to take away your right to religious freedom. And certainly no one should ever be able to make you have sex with somebody you don't want to. Mm-hmm. So even if a judge transfers authority on certain areas from the person with the disability to a conservator, that conservator has to be very careful, because we're talking about federally protected constitutional rights, First Amendment rights of freedom of association and freedom of religion. And it just, to me, it's unconscionable that somebody, even if in a conservatorship, would be forced to go to church or forced to socialize with someone they don't want to socialize with. So there's, someday maybe I can come back and we could talk about First Amendment rights of people with developmental disabilities and people on the spectrum.
A lot of us aren't aware of them.
Well, and I think it's hard. I know as a parent of a 12-year-old, and I'm very overprotective of my 12-year-old.
And I'm very overprotective of my 13-year-old.
And I am trying to pull myself back as he says to me, you better get it under control, right?
Right.
But I know that a magical day is going to come and he's going to turn 18.
Yes.
And no switch is going to turn off all that feeling that I have of, I want this for you and I want you to be safe.
Sure.
And he and I already have conversations about conservatorship.
Really?
We do, because I say to him all the time, there's going to come a day and presumably you'll get to make all the decisions that you want to make, but you have to demonstrate to me between now and then that you're ready for that, because there is a potential that someone could say that you're not.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not trying to say it to him to lord it over him, but to say to him there's a question mark around it, that most people when they're 18, it's just, that's
They're
what
18.
it is. But you have a diagnosis that makes there a little bit of a question mark, and now is your opportunity to demonstrate to me that you can do it.
When he turns 18, and if a petition for limited conservatorship is filed, and then decisions are made by you, let's say as a petitioner, that you would like authority in certain areas, then there has to be a process, because it's not your opinion that counts anymore.
Right.
That's just your opinion.
But I haven't told him that part yet.
Yeah.
I'm telling him that at 12, but I get it at 12.
So there'll have to be an assessment by an objective, qualified individual, psychologist or other, about each of the areas. And so he may very well have, and probably does have at that time, have the capacity to decide social decisions.
Right.
Maybe not medical or financial, because they might be too complicated for some people.
Right.
So, and that's where this system has run amok, because the judges are concerned about getting the case off their desk, off the docket. They're overloaded with cases. They're understaffed. The attorneys have been told you can only put in so many hours on a case. The attorneys are not being, the attorneys don't even receive a training in Disability 101 about the types of disabilities, how to communicate with the person with disabilities, how to interview someone with a significant cognitive or communication. So an attorney cannot represent a client when they don't even know how to communicate with the client.
Right.
So it's once the young person becomes an adult, it is presumed at that moment that they do have all the rights. So you are, or somebody else is trying to take constitutional rights away from someone. And when you're trying to take rights away from someone, there's a very heavy burden of proof in doing so. And if you can meet that burden of proof that it really is absolutely necessary, and there are no lesser restrictive alternatives, then of course that will be done. And that's where supported decision making comes in, and this whole conversation about let's explore the other options so that it isn't necessarily even on one of the 7 issues and all or nothing. Maybe it's you get shared decision making with the person on a particular issue.
And I think it's important that we have these discussions, because we have advocates who will say this is why it's important to start the process when they're 16. We have advocates who will say protect yourself as a parent so that you can protect your child, because we see the other side of it as well. And I think it's good that there's someone like you who's looking out for their rights in terms of these, inalienable rights, right? Right. But we see the other side. When there was a case that we were involved in, Romario Snow, who went missing for 27 days here in Los Angeles. And his mother he was 18 years old. His mother had a terrible time getting the police to do something because she had not conserved him.
Right.
And so they were not paying attention to it the way
He was
that
over
they should
18.
have been.
Yes.
They said he's 18. He walked away. He was on the streets. Horrible things happening to him. When she did find him, we were helping her through the process of getting some conservatorship, and we had him on the show. Nancy's organization very wonderfully got a grant for him to wear a device so that if he got lost again, he could be found. And a rights group came forward and were protesting that, saying that he was being forced to wear it and made the mom prove that he wanted to wear it. And that makes it hard, I think, for parents, because we think, oh, we get it, and we want to make sure that everybody's rights are covered, but some of these kids are in danger, and we want to protect them.
And that's the balance that has to be struck. And if the procedure, if due process of law is followed, if all of their rights are protected along the way, if they have proper legal representation, if proper investigations are done by court investigators to make sure that the right person is being chosen as a conservator, if all of that happens, then I don't have any problem with the result that occurs. But it's when the system is corrupt, unethical, uneducated, steps are skipped, and all of that, then you can't trust the result if the process didn't have integrity. So that's where we're saying there needs to be an agency that is monitoring this limited conservatorship system to make sure that it has integrity.
I agree.
Your website, once again, because we're
it's
out of town.
SpectrumInstitute.org. So please take a look at it and send us your comments.
And we'll have you back again.
So many issues, so many things to consider as our children are aging upward or have already gotten there, or even if your children are young and you're listening to this. These are all things that, it's a brave new world.
It is. Okay. We're totally out of time, but so we'll have to talk about some other things. That we're going to go to a NASCAR autism event on Saturday, and we'll report to you guys about that next week. And we were going to talk about geocaching, but I'll talk about that tomorrow. Also,
saying
tomorrow,
goodbye now?
We are saying goodbye. But tomorrow on the show, Jeb Baker, author of a new book about getting rid of anxiety in teens and children.
Oh,
and
there's
a whole section, I'm reading it right now, there's a whole section on how to do that with individuals who are on the autism spectrum.
Can I borrow that when you're done?
Including when they don't have good receptive language. It's really an amazing
I really
book. So he's going to be with us tomorrow. If you have questions about anxiety for a teen or a child, make sure that you're writing those in tonight. We'll be back next week. We have Vince Redmond on the show.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about bonding and how to break the bonds when it's time. Tom's
when the
going to
parents
love that.
are over
those
helicopter
apron strings, how to get them longer in our kids and in us. So all of that coming up. And but give your kiddos a hug from us.
And yourselves a hug from us as well.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.